Timing is everything. Such an adage has been touted since the dawn of time, because if you're fighting the powers of the universe, you're in trouble, especially in wrestling. Us fans are crazy. Sometimes those at the top think they know best, though, so I'm Simon from What Culture. Please do hit that subscribe button. This is 10 wrestlers WWE pushed at exactly the wrong time. Number 10, Bob Backlund. So Bob Backlund is a legend. Let's not pretend otherwise. But deciding to push him in 1993 is the equivalent of bringing back a golden star from yesteryear and giving them the rub today. Wait a minute. I suppose times were just different, and to be fair, Bob was only 43 years old when he did make his surprise return. That's younger than Sheamus, AJ Styles, and Bobby Lashley, and yet for some reason this felt like your granddad being booked. Made no sense. He just wasn't connecting with a new fan base, even though Vince McMahon allowed him to break the record for the longest time spent in a singular Royal Rumble. So do you want to know what we did? We turned him into a lunatic. Yep. I mean, we basically tied all the loose ends together as Backlund openly talked about being a man out of time and not being able to adjust to the modern world. This is weird stuff. Let's give Bob his due too, he was very good at this, but the feeling remained that the new generation, which the then WWF was pushing, didn't really have a place for Backlund, even if he was a former world champion. Just didn't click. Number 9, Austin Theory. So I actually think this one is a little too early to call. If we don't treat our future stars like stars, nobody is going to think they're a star. That's called wrestling logic. But I do get it. People have this conversation a lot, especially after John Cena returned to Raw and eviscerated this man on the microphone. They felt that he said what we were thinking, and he likely did. Because Cena's whole point was that win or lose during their WrestleMania match, Austin hasn't unlocked the magic yet, so he will continue to struggle to connect. To use proper wrestling vernacular, Theory isn't clicking. There's that word again. And I do think that's key, because he should beat John at the show of shows, and then we can take stock. There's a reason both Triple H and Vince McMahon have seen something in him. That's not an accident. We just need to expose it on a wider scale. If he did become the WWE champion tomorrow, though, there would still be work to do, and it's within this area we must operate. So sure, Austin Theory may be the future of the company, but that doesn't make him the now. This really is going to be an interesting case study to see play out. Number 8, Dolph Ziggler. So this is the forever conversation. Should Dolph Ziggler have been pushed in a different way to how he was? Yes, he should have been. The reason I use such a term is because he still had huge moments. He was the world champion and had the occasional main event, but he was and is so good you have to figure that more could have been done. The dude could do it all. If we go back to the 2010s especially, everybody wanted to see Ziggler get his, apart from seemingly Vince McMahon. The boss felt like he knew better, so while Dolph got thrown a bone here and there, it wasn't the all-encompassing madness we desired. It was strange. The issue that arose is Ziggler was so talented he started to become a main roster gatekeeper, meaning he lost all the time. Even though wrestling is predetermined, it's still watched by human beings. Subconsciously, after a while, you just decide, well, this guy never wins, I'll go and focus on somebody else. By the time we tried to do something in 2019, it was way too late, and none of this was his fault. Dolph has still had a great career and an enviable one, but is it what it should have been? I don't think so. But that's the point. Wrong place, wrong time. Number 7, Big E. Big E deserved so much better than this. I loved it when he became the WWE champion, but much like stablemate Kofi Kingston, for some reason the company did not do right by them. At all. Because even though the powerhouse did cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase to rise the ranks, at no point was he ever treated like the man. Instead, he kind of fluked his way to wins, which is nuts. Have you seen Big E? Could crush us all. It all took off in September 2001, which I would still argue was too late, as he had connected years prior, when we limped through to the Survivor Series, and Roman Reigns just beat him. That's right. It didn't even involve the Usos. So maybe this isn't about it being the wrong time. Management just didn't know what they were doing. On the flip side, the whole focus wasn't the tribal chief, so whatever we did was always going to put Big E in second place, but still. This was stupid. That's right, I said it. Big E had and has all it takes to be a great babyface champion. You just needed to support him as such. Number 6, Mr. Ass. I always enjoy it when we go back to this era and talk about Mr. Ass, because that was his name. Billy Gunn was gone, and if anybody walked into the room, you'd have to tell them you were watching Mr. Ass. So that's the end of that relationship. It is important to remember that in 2023, AEW have done a terrific job with him, and he is mega over. But when the WWF tried to push him in 1999, They weren't really reading the room. For whatever reason, the Attitude Era fans didn't see Billy Gunn as a main eventer, likely because he'd spent his whole career being a tag team guy. With the Road Dogg especially, he had done a lot of goofy stuff, and while it's always goofy wrestling for life as far as I'm concerned, you can't then just try and be serious. You need some sort of evolution. We just chose to name him even more after his rectum. The real nail in the coffin is when he went head-to-head with The Rock, and man, this was death in the ring. The rumor has always been that Dwayne Johnson didn't really want to work with a dude obsessed with his bum, so walked out onto Raw and just killed him with a microphone in his hand. Gunn wasn't ready for that and he never really recovered, at least not in this role. I remember all of this, and the problem really was that we went too fast. The powers that be just woke up one day and screamed, "Billy can do it," rather than figure out how to get him there. Because sure, he could have done, but without the right pathway, nope, didn't work. Number 5, Lord Tensai. I still do not get this one at all. Somebody saw that Matt Bloom was doing excellent work in Japan, but rather than bring him back to WWE and let him be that guy, they drew symbols all over his face and called him Lord Tensai. This wasn't 1987 either, it was 2012, and he was put into a feud with John Cena. Fans weren't having this at all and started to chant Albert for obvious reasons, and given that Brock Lesnar soon returned in the role that Tensai should have had, forget about it, he was done. It didn't last long either, as even WWE realized they'd made an error. Poor Mr. Bloom. Rather than try and fix it, they made him the Hip Hop Hippo, which, yes, was him dancing around with the Funkasaurus. Only in wrestling you can say that sentence. Why the hell do we watch this? Number 4, the Triple H Rehires. So once again, we do have to wait and see. It's too early to tell because things can change in an instant, but at the moment, a lot of the wrestlers Triple H rightfully hired back to WWE haven't found their feet yet. In fact, most have vanished from TV. Hit Row were all over the place before going heel, and then they were no longer being featured. And after a decent feud with Drew McIntyre, Karrion Kross feels lost in the shuffle. I mean, in the lead up to WrestleMania 39, he was barely seen. Tegan Nox hasn't done much of anything so far, which is the same for Candice LeRae and Mia Yim. Not even sure any of them has had a proper feud yet. Dakota Kai has done better, but Damage Control 2 were slightly misplaced. We're still waiting on Bronson Reed. He's been having some great squash matches, but you can't do that forever. You need some meat on the bones. So we do need to give a shout out to Braun Strowman, who did return and picked up exactly where he left off, but a lot of the mentioned folk are going to need some rehab eventually. Let's not get it wrong though. I'm glad they have jobs. Not one of those crazies on Twitter. I mean, they shouldn't have been fired in the first place. Number 3, Batista. So as far as I'm concerned, Batista is one of the most underrated wrestlers ever. The vibe was always that he was a one-trick pony, but he wasn't. The dude had nuance and layers for days, hence why he's smashing it in acting. He gets it. When he decided to return in 2014 though, WWE got it totally wrong. And do you know who called this before it even kicked off? Big Dave. Yep. As soon as he was told his plans, the animal fired back this was a bad idea. He was right. Vince McMahon was adamant that Batista came back as a good guy and win the Royal Rumble, even though we all knew that would get him booed. This was a time where it was Daniel Bryan or bust, and it took watching the show for 10 seconds to see that. It was also in this period where CM Punk walked out, which heightened the cause, and poor Batista got caught in the crosshairs. If we had just brought him back as an evil man, none of this would have been an issue. That's why sometimes you should listen to your wrestlers, almost like they know what they're doing. Number 2, Braun Strowman. So as said earlier, Braun Strowman is smashing it right now. Whoever is responsible for his current placement and booking, bravo, it's great. This was kind of the same back in 2017 when the Monster Among Men was the most over-the-top thing in wrestling, but man, it rocked. He was flipping cars and making Roman Reigns' life a living hell. There was a problem. During the time where we pushed the big dog and nobody else. It got really stupid, as you could tell WWE knew this and figured out ways to give Strowman a little something while never letting him properly beat Roman, and that's why it was dumb. All the fans wanted it, just pull the trigger. It really was frustrating because it wouldn't have affected anything in the long run. Braun could have had his 5 minutes and then sure, go back to Reigns as and when, but give us something. You know what all this means? Sometimes you're just not allowed to have nice things. Number 1, Roman Reigns. And speaking of all of this, yeah, who else? For if you watched the Roman Reigns experiment in real time, you know it was insane. Every week for years, Vince McMahon demanded that Roman was treated as a megastar, even though fans constantly called for somebody else. My nan could have figured this out, and she doesn't even know what wrestling is, and she's dead. It's not like Reigns hadn't connected before this because the Shield were excellent, but it was the insistence to not even play around with this that sent people nuts. And lo and behold, what happened when we got to the head of the table character? He turned into one of the best performers of modern times. I tell you, I am shocked. We did so much here too, with Roman winning multiple world titles and even beating The Undertaker for only the second time in Mania history. But yeah, if we had just turned him heel, forget all this right place, right time nonsense, wouldn't have mattered. We didn't know. As ever, we ignored it for as long as we possibly could. It really is ridiculous. Know of any other wrestlers WWE pushed at exactly the wrong time? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and then don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then you can also go to whatculture.com, where you can read more articles like this with your eyes. You can come follow us at WhatCultureWWE and SimonMiller316 on Twitter. Look, there's videos on the screen right now. How about you touch one and see what happens? My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. You take care of yourself, and I'll chat to you soon.